The meeting room on Brantford station was quiet. Jack Harris sat at the end of the long table, his eyes on the small screen in front of him. The message had come through less than an hour ago. It was short, only a few words, but they carried a weight he understood very well. Stand by for orders. He read it again, his jaw tight. Orders would come soon, and they would not be simple. Across from him, Laura Mitchell leaned back in her chair. She was younger than Jack, but had the same calm focus in her eyes. She had been with him for 3 years, through patrols, border disputes, and training drills that pushed their limits. She could see that this was different. "You think this is about the frontier trouble?" she asked. Jack gave a small nod. "It's not trouble anymore. It's war." The room stayed silent. Outside the windows, the station's docking arms moved slowly, guiding in cargo ships from the surface. Brantford was not a rich world. Its air was thin, its storms violent, and its winters long. But it was home to tough people who worked hard and asked for little. In the training yard below, soldiers were running drills. Jack watched them for a moment. They were strong, but they would need to be stronger. If the call came, it would not be for defense. It would be for something much bigger. Later that day, Jack walked through the barracks. The air smelled faintly of metal and engine grease. Soldiers were cleaning weapons, checking armor, or resting on bunks. When they saw him, they straightened. He nodded to them as he passed. Laura caught up with him near the armory. "You've got that look again?" she said. "What look?" "The one you get when you're already planning the next move?" Jack allowed a faint smile. "Maybe I am." In the armory, racks of rifles lined the walls. Boxes of ammunition were stacked high. The tech crew was testing new targeting units. Every sound in the room was sharp and purposeful. By nightfall, the station's command deck was lit up with data streams. Civilian traffic moved in steady lines on the radar. Supply ships, miners, and survey crews went about their business. But Jack's attention was on a small group of signals far beyond the border. He had seen patterns like this before. They meant movement. They meant preparation. The next morning, Jack called his officers together. The group was small. Laura, a communications chief named Daniel Brooks, logistics officer named Helen Carter, and a few squad leaders. They sat around the same table where the message had arrived. "We don't know when the orders will come," Jack began. "But when they do, we move fast. That means supplies ready, ships prepped, and every soldier fit for action. We can have full loadouts in 2 days." "Make it one," Jack replied. Daniel spoke next. "Comms will stay open around the clock. Any incoming data gets to you within seconds," Laura added. "Training goes to full intensity today. No exceptions." Jack looked at each of them in turn. "We're not here to wait and hope. We're here to be ready." For the next week, Brantford Station felt different. The drills were harder. The ship crews worked longer hours. Mechanics checked and rechecked every engine, every weapon mount, every system that could fail. Soldiers ran obstacle courses in heavy armor until they could barely stand. And through it all, Jack walked among them, speaking little, but watching everything. One evening, as the sun dipped below the storm clouds of Brantford's surface, Jack stood on the observation deck. Laura joined him, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You ever think about how far from Earth we are?" she asked. "Every day," Jack said. "And yet, if something happens out here, it'll be us who moves first, not them." Jack took a slow sip, then set the mug down. "That's why we're here." In the quiet that followed, the station lights flickered slightly as another ship docked. Somewhere deep inside, Jack felt the weight of the moment. The galaxy might think humans were just another small voice in a large crowd. But when the time came, he intended to prove them wrong. The station woke before dawn. Floodlights lit the training yard, and the cold air carried the sound of boots striking metal as squads moved in formation. Jack Harris stood near the edge, his hands behind his back, watching every movement. The soldiers knew he missed nothing. Laura Mitchell was out in the field with them. She ran beside the squads, calling orders, her voice cutting through the morning air. Sweat dripped from her brow, but she kept pace easily. When she saw one soldier start to slow, she pushed harder, making the rest follow her lead. Inside the hangar, crews worked on the station's 2 largest transports. Their hulls were open, with panels removed and tools scattered on the floor. Mechanics climbed over engines, checking fuel lines and replacing worn parts. The smell of oil and metal was strong. A few pilots stood nearby, reviewing flight data on small screens. Jack walked through the hangar, stopping beside one of the transport commanders, Paul Harris. Paul was younger, with a sharp focus in his eyes. He had grown up on Brantford and knew every detail about the ship he flew. "How's the prep?" Jack asked. "We'll be ready," Paul said. "Engines are at full power, and the new armor plating's holding up in the tests." "Good. Keep it that way." By midday, the soldiers had moved to the weapons range. Rows of targets lined the far wall, and the sound of rifles cracked through the air. Laura moved among the shooters, correcting their stance and reminding them to control their breathing. Every few minutes, a fresh group rotated in, their faces set with determination. Helen Carter came to Jack with a report in hand. "Supplies are almost loaded. Food, ammo, and medkits are ready for transport. We'll have enough for a long mission." Jack nodded. "Double-check the rations. If we're gone longer than planned, I don't want shortages." Daniel Brooks stayed close to the comms room. He monitored every signal coming in and going out, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. Static filled the background, but Daniel kept his focus, filtering out useless chatter and scanning for anything important. Late in the afternoon, the officers gathered again. This time, they met in the hangar, where the crews were finishing their checks. Laura reported first. "The squads are in good shape. They're running faster, shooting straighter, and holding formation better than they were a week ago. If we have to move tomorrow, they're ready." Helen spoke next. "Supplies will be fully loaded in 3 hours. We've secured extra fuel cells, just in case." Daniel added, "Comms are open and clear. If anything comes in, you'll know immediately." Jack listened to each of them, his expression unchanged. "Good work, but don't slow down. Till we get the orders, we keep pushing. We might not get a warning before we move." That night, the station's corridors were quieter, but no one truly rested. Some soldiers stayed in the training yard. Running drills under the floodlights, mechanics worked through the night, the sound of tools echoing down the hallways. Even the medics in the infirmary kept busy, checking over kits and sterilizing equipment. Jack walked the station alone, moving from one section to another. In the mess hall, he saw a few soldiers eating in silence, their eyes on their trays. In the barracks, some were cleaning weapons, others lying on their bunks staring at the ceiling. No one spoke much. They all knew what might be coming. When he reached the observation deck, he found Laura already there, looking out over the planet's dark surface. The clouds below glowed faintly from the city lights far beneath. "You ever wonder what we'll find when we get the call?" she asked. Jack stepped up beside her. "I don't wonder, I plan." She gave a short nod. "Then I'll be ready." They stood there for a while, saying nothing more. The hum of the station's systems filled the silence. Somewhere deep inside, both of them felt the same thing. The orders would come. When they did, Brantford Station would be ready to move, and nothing would stop them from taking that first step forward. The call came without warning. It was early morning on Brantford Station when Daniel Brooks rushed into the command room, holding a datapad. Jack Harris was already there, reviewing reports from the night. Daniel placed the pad on the table, his voice steady but urgent. "It's from Central Command. Coordinates and mission details. We're moving out immediately." Jack read the message. There were no long explanations, only the target location and a clear directive. Secure the area and hold it until further orders. The location was far from Brantford, near a trade route that had been quiet for weeks. Quiet, Jack knew, never lasted. He pressed the comm panel. "All officers to the hangar now." Within minutes, Laura Mitchell, Helen Carter, and Paul Harris joined him beside the transports. Mechanics were already sealing panels and checking final systems. Soldiers filed in from the barracks carrying gear and weapons, their faces set and focused. Jack addressed them without raising his voice. "We have our orders. We launch in 30 minutes. This will not be a training run. We move fast, hit hard, and hold position until told otherwise. Stay with your squads, watch each other's backs, and follow orders exactly." Laura took her place with the ground forces, moving through the lines to check armor straps and weapon settings. Helen oversaw the loading of supplies, ensuring nothing was left behind. Daniel returned to the comm station on the lead transport, already scanning for updates. Paul Harris climbed into the cockpit of his transport, running through his final checks. "Engines green. Navigation ready. We're good to go," he reported. Jack boarded the lead transport, taking the command seat near the front. Through the forward screen, he could see the station's hangar doors sliding open, revealing the dark stretch of space beyond. The hum of the engines deepened as the ships powered up. "All units launch," Jack ordered. The transports lifted smoothly from the hangar floor and moved into the open void. Behind them, 2 escort ships took position, their lights glowing faintly against the stars. The journey would take several hours, and Jack spent the time reviewing terrain maps and defense plans. Laura came forward once the troops had settled. "Squads are ready." "No issues so far," she said. "Good," Jack replied. "When we land, we set up perimeter defense first. Then we move on the objective." The hours passed in silence, broken only by status updates from Paul and Daniel. Finally, the target world came into view. It was small, its surface marked by jagged mountains and wide plains. The landing zone was on high ground, giving them a clear view in all directions. Paul guided the transport down with steady hands, the landing gear locking into place with a heavy thud. Dust swirled around the ship as the engines powered down. The ramp lowered, and the first squads moved out. Rifles ready. Air was thin but breathable. The wind carried a dry, sharp smell. Jack stepped onto the ground, scanning the horizon. He saw no movement, but his instincts told him they were not alone. "Set perimeter," he ordered. Laura's squads spread out, positioning portable barriers and sensor units. Helen oversaw the setup of supply stations near the transports. Daniel stayed inside, keeping the comms link open to Central Command. Hours passed without contact. The soldiers rotated watch shifts, scanning the rocky slopes and open plains. The stillness was heavy, but no one let their guard down. Near sunset, Jack stood with Laura on the edge of the ridge. The sky burned orange and red as the sun dipped low. "You think they'll come?" Laura asked. "If this place matters, they will," Jack said. She nodded once, her hand resting on her rifle. "Then we'll be ready." The night came quickly, bringing a deep cold. The camp was lit by low lamps, casting long shadows over the rocks. Jack moved through the perimeter, speaking briefly with each squad. They were alert, steady, and prepared. Out. In the command tent, Daniel was monitoring signals when he looked up at Jack. "Something's out there. Movement on the edge of range." Could be nothing but... Jack's eyes narrowed. "Wake everyone. No one stands alone." Within minutes, the quiet camp was alive with motion. Soldiers took positions, weapons ready. The first mission since the call had begun, and they would not take a single step back. The ridge was quiet, but the stillness felt wrong. Jack Harris stood at the edge, his eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the lights. The wind carried faint sounds, too distant to name, but enough to keep every soldier tense. Laura Mitchell moved among the squads, checking each position, her voice low but steady. Daniel Brooks remained inside the command tent, his eyes on the scanner. Small signals flickered across the screen, moving in irregular patterns. He tapped his headset. "Jack, they're closer now. It's than 2 kilometers. Jack didn't hesitate. "All squads prepare for contact. Maintain positions. Hold fire until my order." The soldiers adjusted their rifles, checked their ammunition, and watched the shadows. Helen Carter oversaw the supply point, making sure med kits and extra ammo were within reach. The cold bit at their faces, but no one moved from their post. Minutes passed. The first shapes appeared in the distance, faint against the starlit sky. They moved slowly at first, then began to spread out. Jack raised a hand. "Wait for it." The tension built. Every heartbeat felt longer than the last. Then, without warning, the figures surged forward. Jack's voice cut through the night. "Engage." The ridge exploded with sound. Rifles cracked, muzzle flashes lit the rocks, and the enemy advance slowed under the sudden storm of fire. Laura's squads held firm, each line covering the next. Jack moved along the front, shouting orders and helping reposition teams where the pressure was highest. The ground shook with the force of incoming fire. Dust and debris filled the air, stinging eyes and blurring vision. Helen moved supplies forward, running between cover to get ammo to the front. She didn't flinch as rounds struck nearby. Daniel relayed updates from the scanner. They're trying to flank on the east side. The squad's moving in fast. Jack turned to Laura. Take the second unit and block them. Don't let them through. She nodded and moved quickly, leading her squad into the darkness. The sound of gunfire shifted as they engaged on the flank. Jack focused on holding the center, keeping the line steady. The fight dragged on, each minute testing their endurance. The ridge's high ground gave them an advantage, but the pressure never stopped. When the first wave finally broke, the ground was littered with debris and empty casings. The air smelled of smoke and metal. Jack ordered a quick regroup. Check ammo, check wounds, reset positions. We hold until morning. Medics moved through the lines, treating the injured. No one spoke of retreat. The soldiers knew this position was the key to the mission. If they lost it, the entire operation would fail. Laura returned from the flank, her armor scratched and dusty, blocked them. They pulled back for now, but they'll try again. Jack met her gaze. Then we'll be ready again. The rest of the night was tense. Small skirmishes flared in the dark, but the main force didn't return. By dawn, the cold wind carried only the sound of shifting rocks. The horizon glowed with pale light, revealing the battered ridge and the soldiers who still stood guard. Helen reported the supply count. We've got enough for another day, maybe 2, but we'll need resupply if this keeps up. Daniel added. Comms are clear for now. No new orders from command. Jack looked over the camp. The soldiers were tired, but their eyes were sharp. They had faced the first real push and held their ground. We hold here until told otherwise, he said. No one moves alone. Laura stood beside him, scanning the plains below. Enemy was out there watching, waiting. She could feel it. Jack knew the next attack would come soon. When it did, they would not just hold the ridge, would push forward. The second attack came just after sunrise. First warning was a low rumble from the plains below, like distant thunder. Jack Harris was already awake, walking the ridge, when Daniel Brooks's voice came through the comm. Multiple groups moving in fast. Bigger than last night, Jack called out to the squads. Positions now, full defense. No gaps. Laura Mitchell was already at the front line, checking every rifle and adjusting the positions of her soldiers. Tighten the formation. Watch the low ground. That's where they'll try to break through. Helen Carter moved quickly between the supply point and the firing lines, dropping extra ammo crates behind cover. Her hands were steady, her movements quick. She knew the fight would be harder this time. The enemy appeared over the rise in numbers they hadn't seen before. They moved fast, spreading wide to surround the ridge. Jack didn't wait. Engage. The ridge erupted with gunfire. The sound was deafening, the air thick with smoke and dust. Soldiers fired in short, controlled bursts, their rifles heating under the constant pressure. The high ground worked in their favor, but the attackers kept coming, climbing the slope with determination. Laura's voice cut through the chaos. Left flank. They're climbing under the rocks. She led a squad down the slope, firing as they moved. The attackers there fell back, but more came from the right. Jack shifted his focus, directing 2 squads to reinforce the weak side. Bullets struck the rocks around them, sending shards into the air. He felt the sting of one across his cheek, but didn't slow. Helen kept the ammo moving, crawling through gaps in cover to reach squads under heavy fire. Keep it steady, she shouted as she passed another crate forward. Daniel called from the command tent, another group coming straight from the front. This is the big push. Jack looked at Laura, who had just climbed back up from the left side. We hold here. If they take this ridge, it's over. The attackers hit the center hard. The impact shook the line, but the soldiers held. Jack moved along the front, firing when he could, pulling wounded back when needed. Medics worked behind the cover, their hands moving fast. The fight dragged on for what felt like hours. Every meter of ground was contested. The ridge's rocky surface was scattered with spent casings and broken gear. The air was sharp with the smell of burned metal. Then slowly, the pressure began to break. The attackers' lines wavered. Jack saw it immediately. Push forward. Don't give them space. Laura led the charge, her squad moving with precision. They advanced step by step, forcing the attackers down the slope. The sound of gunfire grew distant as the enemy retreated across the plains. When the last shots faded, the ridge was silent, except for the wind. Soldiers stood where they were, breathing hard, weapons still in their hands. Jack lowered his rifle and scanned the horizon, but the attackers were gone. Helen walked up from the supply point, her face streaked with dust. "We've still got ammo left, but not much." Daniel arrived from the command tent, holding a small comm device. Message from Central Command. They say hold position until reinforcements arrive. We've secured the objective. Jack looked around at the soldiers, their armor dented, their faces lined with exhaustion. They had held the ridge against 2 full assaults. The cost had been high, but they had not stepped back. Laura came to stand beside him. "They won't forget this." Jack nodded. "Neither will we." The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the rocky ground. The ridge was theirs, and for now, the horizon was clear. But Jack knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the plains, more battles waited. When they came, Brantford soldiers would be ready to take the next step forward.